What's the biggest lie you were told as a child? When I was a little girl and still believed in Santa, I figured why not ask for all the most expensive toys I could think of. I wrote my letter and asked my mom to put it in the mailbox. Later that night, I saw her crying, and at the time, I had no idea why. She told me everything was okay, and her eyes were just watering. Years later, my mom revealed to me that she felt ashamed for raising me in such poverty, since we had a small house and I didn't get anything the other kids at school did. However, I remember that Christmas morning. I opened my presents to find all the stuff I had wished for, and spent the entire day playing with my expensive new doll set in my new pajamas. When I asked my mom how she got them for me, she said that our neighbors saw her crying, and after finding out it was because she couldn't give me the Christmas I wanted, they gave her $500 to buy everything on my list. She didn't want to accept it at first, but they told her it was the least they could do. Earlier that year, when I was playing outside, I noticed their new puppy's leash wasn't put on right, and stopped it from jumping out into the road right before it would have been hit by a car. They had been waiting to repay me for that ever since.
Undercover cops? What's the craziest thing you've done not to blow your cover? I was assigned a case to expose a high-level gang for substance dealing, and spent the next 2 years integrating myself into their gang. I knew what I was getting into. I truly had to become a different person to get close to these guys, without them realizing who I really was. To this day, there are many things I saw that still keep me up at night, but nothing like the time I was officially initiated into their gang. A guy who owed us serious money was brought into one of our hideouts. He was scared shitless, since he didn't pay us back on time and knew what was going to happen. But then I saw his face. I immediately recognized him, and my heart dropped. We went to high school together, and were actually pretty good friends at one point. I watched him beg for his life. He cried he had a wife and kids, and told us he was doing everything he could to pay us back. It took everything I had not to break down right there. I had a mask on, but if I didn't, he for sure would have recognized me. It was up to me to do it. This was my initiation, and I had no choice. It led to successfully infiltrating their gang, and the biggest bust in our state's history. I still live every day with constant guilt.
What's the worst thing you've ever walked in on? I got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom when I noticed someone left the kitchen light on. It was probably 2 a.m., so I walked in to turn it off, but saw my teenage son standing in front of the microwave. I was barely awake, so I rubbed my eyes, and after a second realized he was also completely naked, except for a pair of socks. I could barely process what I was seeing, and I tried to leave before he noticed me. But just then, he turns around, sees me, and we both just stare at each other in pure shock. He then panics and starts trying to run away while covering himself, but slipped and landed hard on the floor, dropping his hot pocket. I covered my eyes as I helped him up and made sure he was okay, and handed him a towel to cover himself with. We both went back to our rooms, and I went to bed that night absolutely dying of laughter. When I woke up the next morning, he was already gone, and for the next few days, he avoided me as much as possible. Eventually, we just moved on, until 10 years later, we were on a plane talking about all the funny memories we had. I said, "Remember that one night?" When he immediately cuts me off and abruptly says, "Yes." I started giggling, and he ignored me the entire rest of the flight. We both knew exactly which night I was talking about.